Trading. Fantastic. Well, welcome everyone to 4 Warnings and a Strategy for China in 2022. How Canadian food and drinks brands can keep China in their export portfolio in the new year and beyond. My name is Bill Coleman Jr., and I'm the president of CACL and the chief paddler for Canoe Global Trading Company. Canoe Trading is a CACL company, and we've been helping Canadian brands succeed in China and Asia for over 35 years. I'm honored to be presenting to you all today with 2 of the most experienced people I know in the international trade and trade show business. They really help us get business done. Tom Cumming is the Deputy Director of the Trade Commissioner Service in Ontario and is probably the most helpful government guy we've met on our many travels to China over the years. Tom was posted at the Canadian Consulate in Guangzhou when we first met. That was 4 or 5 years ago, I think, Tom. And he now leads the high intensity service in Toronto and will be telling us about how his team can help Canadian food and drink exporters in China during these interesting times. Welcome, Tom.
Thanks, Bill.
Susan Powell is the president of the Canadian Food Exporters Association, which supports hundreds of food and drink exporters from across the country, participate in virtual and in-person trade shows around the world every year, except during COVID, of course. Susan, I think the last time you and I saw each other was in person was in November of 2019 at the ProLine show in Shanghai.
That's correct.
Sticks out in my memory because that was the last time I left Canada. Susan's going to present a quick overview of the CFEA and the events that it has planned for early in 2022 as well. So welcome, Susan.
Thank you.
I had a quick look at our attendee list before the webinar today, and it looks like we have food and drink exporters and professionals from Quebec, Ontario, and BC. And it looks like we have people joining from China and Singapore as well. So that's fantastic. I also see that we have several of our current clients who've joined us today. Welcome Tuan Stoltz from Dare Foods, Joe Will from Struan Winery, Chauncey Carter from Niagara Falls Craft Distillers, and Patrick Egger from Bariatrics Nutrition, and welcome everyone. Whoop. There we go. For today's agenda, I will start with a presentation on the 4 warnings we have for Canadian food and drink exporters, and touch briefly on a strategy that has worked well for our current clients. I will then pass the paddle over to Tom Cumming for his expertise and practical advice on market strategies, and then finish with CFEA event and support from Susan Powell. Now, fair warning, I will follow up at the end of this presentation with a hardball sales pitch on Canoe Trading services before we launch into a 10 to 15 minute Q&A session. Now, please feel free to type your questions into the chat at any point during our presentation, and we will try to address them during the Q&A. Now, before we begin, some of you may be wondering just who Canoe Global Trading Company is. Well, in 1986, CACL opened its doors to promote Canada-China trade. Over the years, we've helped many Canadian food and drink brands, many of whom are listed here, explore and expand their business to China and across Asia. In 2021, CACL launched Canoe Global Trading Company to leverage digital and virtual trade show capabilities around the globe. The Canoe is Canada's first and fastest growing online trading company. So that's who we are. Now, let's begin our session. 4 warnings and a strategy for China in 2022. So please note, the opinions in the first part of this presentation are from Canoe Global Trading Company. They are informed by 35 plus years of experience in Canada-China trade relations, and they're based on reporting from the Globe and Mail, CBC, the World Trade Organization, in addition to some papers from China as well, like the South China Morning Post, the Global Times, Caixin Global, and other publications as well. So to start with the World Trade Organization. Sorry. As the old Chinese curse goes, we are living in interesting times. The world economy is going through economic, health, and climate shocks at a rate that has never before been seen in our history. According to the World Trade Organization's 2021 World Trade Report, our global economy is increasingly exposed to risks and shocks which cause significant economic impacts. We're seeing natural shocks, technological and operational shocks, socioeconomic shocks. In the same report, the WTO recommends that in order to mitigate these risks, economies should diversify and deepen their relationships to mitigate the impacts from these shocks. And that will benefit both international trade, but also make domestic economies much more resilient to future shocks. Now, spoiler alert, we are also recommending this strategy to mitigate the impacts of shocks in China. Now on to the 4 warnings. Warning number 1. Natural shocks in China, Canada, and the rest of the world will continue. In BC, the floods have shut down the Port of Vancouver. And in China, in the first 3 quarters of this year, natural disasters have caused a direct economic loss of $44.5 billion US. And as for COVID, while Western media has not reported any cases in China for many months, Chinese media has stated that this month alone, there were a record 93 new cases of the Delta variant, and Beijing is limiting domestic flights from high-risk regions. COVID continues to impact business travel by requiring COVID tests within 48 hours of entrance into trade shows, going on flights, staying in hotels outside your own region. We saw the impact of this policy at ProWine and FHC in Shanghai earlier this month. And we know that it is going to continue well into next year. As for technological and operational shocks, our warning number 2 is that trade will change faster in China. We all know that doing business in China is challenging, to say the least. The pace of change is one of those challenges which creates operational shocks. Look at the change in freight rates that has just happened in the past year. Freight from China to North America this past year was up over 300%. And then last month, it dropped by 50%. This not only impacts the cost of freight that we're sending over, but it impacts the availability of containers from Canada to China as well. In addition, when we look at the application and enforcement of government policies, that is another reason why doing business in China is so challenging. For example, in August, Beijing issued a decree to crack down on what was known as walled gardens that big tech companies had on e-commerce data and on advertising. 2 months later, Alibaba's net income dropped 87%. Now, we're not saying it was solely because of this crackdown, but that certainly didn't help. Finally, the General Administration of China Customs has mandated that all food and beverage manufacturers who export to China must register on their single window platform in order to import goods into China on January 1st, 2022. This was decreed earlier this year in April, I believe, but only this month in November was the portal actually available in English. So we're going to work with all of our clients to register in time so their manufacturer registration number can be applied to labels in time for imports that'll happen in January. Warning number 3, China will continue to assert its position around the world. It will continue to position itself against our largest trading partner, the US. It will continue to assert its one China policy with regards to Taiwan. And it will flex its international might with other markets in Asia, like Japan and India. Look at what happened to Australia. They didn't agree with China's public position on the World Health Organization's investigation into the origins of COVID. China immediately hiked tariffs up so high on products ranging from wine to coal that the Australian economy is currently now decoupling from China. China's response to that, they issued a list of 14 grievances which Australia must resolve before resuming normal trade relations with China. This is not the end of this type of struggle. And that leads to our fourth warning. Canada-China relations have entered a new era. China's a much larger economy than Canada, and they're not afraid to use their weight. Canada is facing increased pressure to lead the cause for humanitarian crises in China, like hostage diplomacy, the genocide of Uyghur minorities in Xinjiang province. Pressure will continue to mount on Canada, and China will not take it well. When Meng Wanzhou was detained 3 years ago and the two Michaels were subsequently arrested, the impact on our exports of wine to China was immediate and significant. Only in 2021 did we see a return to normal business because of our strategy to deepen our penetration in market. Now, to gain clarity on China's position to Canada-China relations, just look at the comments from Xi Jinping and Ambassador Song. Ambassador Song says mutual respect and mutual benefit are the basic principles for developing economic and trade relations between our two countries. Mutual respect. And from Xi Jinping, they say, China will be a responsible stakeholder willing to engage as long as there are no ideological attacks. All right, doesn't get any clearer than that. So why on earth would a Canadian food and drinks company want to export to China? And I think everybody on the call today understands why. Since CACL opened its doors in 1986, China has risen to be a commercial superpower. In 2018, they had imports of just over $2.1 trillion US. They are now the world's #1 export market for wine and spirits, for beer, for lobster, for seafood, edible oils, maple syrup, imported food, beef, pork, fruit, grains, and many other food and drink categories. Quite simply, if you're not doing business in China, then you're missing out on the world's biggest opportunity. So how do you do that? Given all the shocks, all the risks, all the warnings that we've got for doing business in China, what does Canoe recommend in terms of a strategy for Canadian food and drink exports? Quite simply, diversify and deepen your exports. It's the same thing that the World Trade Organization is recommending to economies around the world. You want to diversify within China. You want to diversify across Asia, and you want to diversify around the globe. You also want to deepen the relationship that you have with your existing agents in China to better understand the sales challenges that they have and better support the strategies that are promoting your brands. A couple of examples. So the first example we have is with our client Struan Winery. CACL has represented Struan in China and Asia for over 20 years. 3 years ago, sales dropped dramatically. In 2021, we rebuilt sales by building a deeper relationship and leveraging the diverse agency network that we have within China. And the results from that, we saw a 139% increase in sales in this past fiscal year over the prior 2 fiscal years combined. And for 2022, by leveraging this strategy further, we're expecting another 5 to 10 shipments that will go to China next year. Another example is what we've been able to do with a new client this year, Niagara Falls Craft Distillers. So Niagara Falls makes delicious Canadian spirits using the water from Niagara Falls. They had been working with other export agents without success. They asked Canoe to explore opportunities for them in China and around the world. And our results over the past 7 months, we have an order to Japan. We have 2 prospects in China, a prospect in Taiwan, a prospect in Brazil, a prospect in Turkey, and 1 in the Netherlands. And we're forecasting 3 to 5 containers of whiskey to be shipped next year as a result of this diverse marketing strategy. So in short, diversify and deepen your exports with Canoe in 2022. Diversify within China, diversify across Asia, and diversify around the world. And then further deepen your understanding and relationships in market by working closely with in-market agents, meeting regularly with them, whether it's online or in person when possible again, and support marketing promotions and in-store marketing activities through your existing agents. And by using this strategy, you will have stable growth and a resilient business for years to come. So thank you. This is my part of the presentation. If you have any questions on this part of the presentation, or would like a free consultation about opportunities in China and around the world, please feel free to contact me at this email address and that phone number. Now I'll pass the reins over to Tom, and he's going to take you through what the Trade Commissioner Service can do for you. And let me just make Tom the host here. There you go, Tom.
Great. Can you hear me okay?
I can, yes.
Perfect. Well, I was really hoping you were going to say I'll pass the paddle to Tom, but I'll forgive you this time.
Oh, that was my plan.
So I'm Tom Cumming. I work for the Trade Commissioner Service. You'll often hear that China is a marathon, not a sprint. My marathon started as a young man, roughly when the earth started to cool. In high school, my father took me on a buying trip that included China. To date myself, at that point, China had 2 forms of currency, one for locals and one for foreigners. It kind of kindled a love within me about everything Chinese, the culture, the language, the history, and I've kind of followed it on ever since. So in those terms, I started studying Chinese very shortly after returning. I joined immigration, so this was back when it was called Citizenship and Immigration Canada, and became a visa officer, but my specialty was anti-fraud. So I got sent all over China to go investigate people with my nascent Chinese. It's amazing how quickly your Chinese will improve when you only know one dish to eat. Beyond then, I ended up leaving the government for quite a stretch. I ran the operations of a Canadian public company called Xi Corporation back when there were keys on a keyboard. That was what allowed on a phone. That actually allowed you to communicate in Chinese. An online learning platform. And then after doing some studies abroad in Spain, started an import-export company in China that dealt with mostly industrial goods, whether it's plumbing fixtures, laboratory gear, tools, PPE, that sort of thing, with the primary markets being in Europe, which was sort of Spain, Germany, and France, and then ran Canadian operations of an importer, largely Chinese goods from Edmonton, but we had coverage across Canada. After that, my wife, who is Chinese, oddly enough, decided that she liked the idea of being, a diplomatic family. I rejoined the Trade Commissioner Service and had 2 postings. The first one in Taipei, and the second one that I've just returned from in June of 2020, which was in Guangzhou, where I was in charge of the trade program for the 6 provinces of South China, which is roughly a market of about 300 million people, or roughly equivalent to the United States. So that's sort of my background. I'm going to go very quickly through the Trade Commissioner Service, which is of course a free service for exporters. And I'll go at light speed through that portion, because what I want to get is to some of the lessons learned about China and maybe some guidance for SMEs seeking to establish a foothold in that market. So with your permission, I'll start right now. So the Trade Commissioner Service is, we're well over 125 years old now. We're here to help exporters. Our main functions are the promotion of exports from Canada and the attraction of foreign investment to Canada. Exporting for Canadian companies, the companies that export tend to be very resilient. They are able to diversify away from purely the domestic market. And of course, as you'll see on the slide, the market worldwide is much, much, much larger than Canada. We're about 0.5% of the world's population. It allows companies to be more resilient. It allows them to hire more people. They pay their higher taxes overall as a quantity, not per company. And they tend to create stable, high-paying jobs. They're also much more innovative generally than companies that are serving a very local market. A couple of things to think about as you're looking to engage is, where's your company in the kind of the readiness spectrum? Do you have your structure figured out? Is it something that enables you to take in funding and grow an international program? Do you have the support and experience for internationalization at the senior levels? And of course, is your intellectual property protected, which is a particular concern in China? Second of all, how are you going to plan to handle internationalization? It's a tough market abroad, particularly in China. Before, we were much more focused on how do we gain a foothold. Now it is risk balancing, so taking the potential of the market against risks and how to minimize your risks through things like utilizing the services of the Trade Commissioner Service. Which market should you target and when? And how are you going to get the right contacts to make sure you succeed once you get into that market? The Trade Commissioner Service has three main pillars. The first one is a network of 160 offices abroad. So no matter where you're going, we've probably got people there. Our people are a mix of Canadian-based staff and locally engaged. So we have people who have years and years and years of experience and people who actually understand the Canadian market very well. We provide market intelligence. We get you the connections you need, including with professional service providers in those markets. If you run into trouble, if your shipment is stuck in customs and so forth, we try to help as best we can. And of course, we are the people behind free trade agreements. So we try to make sure you're maximizing your position with our FTAs. We do have some funding. We're not a major player in this space like an EDC or a BDC, but we do have funding that'll help SMEs explore foreign markets. This is called Can Export. There's also money for associations like the Canadian Food Exporters Association. And I should say thank you very much for giving me the chance to speak today. We also work in what's called Can Export Innovation. That's for research and development done with a foreign partner to target that market and the needs of those consumers. And finally, consumer community investments, which is when an entire region comes together to try to build an export base. And the Canadian International Innovation Program is an offshoot. It's limited to a small number of countries. I'm happy to discuss it, but it shouldn't be too relevant today. And then finally, business support. So this is through programs like the Canadian Technology Accelerator, where in agriculture, for example, we would take a bunch of ag tech companies and take them to one of our posts abroad so they can meet people in the market, meet funders in the market, make the connections they need. Inclusive international business development, I'll get into that a bit later. And of course, trade mission and market exploration support. Our network, again here, just a quick overview of this. I won't go into it, but you can see how the kind of depth that we have to draw from. The last slide, 6 offices in Canada. I'm a deputy director at the regional office in Toronto. My team is one of 3. We have teams that do mainly technology, mainly advanced manufacturing. And my team does a bunch of the more kind of cutting edge stuff. So that's programs like key accounts for our high growth, high potential clients, Global Mentors program, which will match your company with somebody in that market who's either a Canadian or friend of Canada with experience. The Canadian Technology Accelerators, as I talked about a little bit, which will take a sector or a subsector of companies and move them temporarily to that market so they can meet the people there. We also deal with business accelerators and incubators, venture capital, emerging technologies. So that's everything that's deep tech, artificial intelligence, cryptography, quantum technologies. And then finally, and probably most useful to this crowd, we have a particular focus on China as a geography. We have an officer who covers nothing but e-commerce platforms, and that can be China or abroad, intellectual property protection, consumer goods, among a number of other subsectors. But we're happy to work with you. Our consumer goods person would love to meet you if you're doing consumer packaged goods, natural health products, pet foods, or what have you. We stay a little bit away from the commoditized agricultural products. That's more the kind of province of Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada or MAFRA at the provincial level. We deal more with things that can be branded and that there will be a consumer exchange and consumer experience involved. Okay. This is a little bit repetitive. It'll tell you what our main services are. Again, I'm happy to share the presentation later, but I won't go too deep into it. Here's our footprint in China. You'll see that we have offices throughout China in what's called Greater China. So Greater China also encompasses Hong Kong and Taiwan. Our main offices are Beijing, Shanghai, Chongqing, and Guangzhou. And then we have 10 satellite offices with 2 trade commissioners each. You can see them. They are the small blue diamonds. So we have quite good coverage throughout China. And as I'll say a little bit later, please don't fall into the fallacy that China is one market. It is not. Things are very, very different on the food and wine side. Consumers in the south, in the Cantonese portion, in Guangdong, are extremely different from people, for example, in the north, in terms of their appetites, in terms of their buying profiles, in terms of their disposable income. A little bit on funding. These are the 4 funding programs I mentioned earlier. I'm happy to kind of do a walk through this if you have interest. Please do feel free to reach out to me. My email will be at the end, and I'm sure Bill would be happy to connect you to me. And if I don't have the answers, I'll find somebody who does. I'm not an expert in agricultural marketing or agri-food marketing. I've dabbled in the past and had some dealings, but I can connect you to people who have very, very specific answers, very, very specific problems. Again, I won't go too deep into this. This is the eligibility for the funding program. Largely, you'll see on the right-hand side, those are the eligibility criteria. And on the left-hand side, you'll see what kind of expenses can be covered. These can be, the CanExport program can be very, very useful to companies, particularly if they're starting and they don't have a lot of resources to devote to specific markets. This will help to defray some of those costs on a 50-50 cost basis. Okay, trade mission support, you'll see some pictures of some very beautiful and handsome people on the right-hand side. We do also support, in particular, inclusive trade. So you'll see the number of groups there where we put together specific cohorts that focus on those groups and their needs and their interests in markets abroad. Okay, we are within a galaxy of support. You'll notice, especially recently since the advent of COVID, everybody's got a program to try to help. We try to be connectors. What the Trade Commissioner Service is, at the very root of it, is we are business development. So on the Canadian side, in our offices, we try to make sure you're ready to export. That includes everything from your IP strategy, your structuring, your funding, where we don't do something as our kind of core service, like startup funding, for example. We would connect you to somebody like BDC, either on the venture capital side or on the expansion loan side. EDC, if you have a need to kind of brush up on your skills before you internationalize, we'll put you in touch with the people from the Toronto Regional Board of Trade and their Trade Accelerator program. With FITT on the training side, you can see from the screen there's a wide variety of players, and we try to be the connector to those. So if you approach us and it's not something that we have a high confidence in, we'll make sure that you meet the people who do. Okay, onto the agricultural side. So thank you all for bearing with me through a bit of kind of a pitch for our service. So if you take a look here, of our overall exports, more than a third of our exports to China were either agricultural products or ag-food products. Within the pie chart, you'll see there the larger ones. So this is fish and seafood, meat, and grains. Those are largely the kind of the responsibility of industry groups. This could be Canada Beef, this could be OGGA for ginseng, and they work very closely with Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada. We have people in Beijing who work for Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada on secondment, and they deal with a lot of things that really touch on those larger, more commoditized products, things like market access, things like advocacy to the Chinese government, things like disseminating information on new regulations that are coming out, and we'll discuss one very important one a little bit later. But where the Trade Commissioner Service is trying to focus is on those products where branding is important, where differentiation is important, which tend to be more small and medium-sized enterprises. And we try to lend our business development support to get those footholds in the market, to bring that cohort of companies up, because we see, even though it's a small portion of the overall exports in the sector, these are the ones where we can have a good value added and where there's high potential for high growth. So you'll see some examples of the products in there, whether it's pet food or what we call other. Here is a little bit of a blow up on what other is. You'll see the figures there. There's no reason why these can't grow by multiples. We have the capabilities, we have the companies. It's just a matter of really getting that support together and getting that focus on the market. These kind of companies tend to meet their interlocutors at things like FHC and Cial and things like ProWine. And there is a tendency of these companies to do some sales via online platforms, much more so than the more traditional exporters. So that's why we try to really focus on choice of e-commerce platform, not just saying that here's JD, here's Tmall, but saying for your products, maybe this suits you best after really getting to understand your company. Okay, I've got a very busy screen here, so I'll try to see it. I've got a few slides of guidance. Once that's done, my monologue will be finished, and hopefully we'll have a nice, robust kind of Q&A session. To state the obvious, the potential is there. It's a massive market. It's a segmented market. It's a highly competitive market. We need to develop our capacity and really focus on our ability to meet the needs of the market if we want to be able to compete against the other major competitors, like the Australias, the United States, and so forth. We think there will be continued growth in this market and through the Asia Pacific region generally. And what we need to do is, we've always been quite strong in bulk commodity, but really the future, if we want to see that growth, if we want to see the foothold, if we want to see the endurance and sustainability of these products, we're going to have to move up the value chain into more branded products and more differentiated products. For Canadian businesses, and there's going to be, like I said, there's 3 slides of this. So maintain and expand your ties, seek to differentiate and find those niche submarkets. Within China, for example, there's 100 cities of more than 1 million people. So you've got 100 markets, more than 1 million people. Regions are different, languages are different, culture is different, preferences are different, dietary habits are different. Adapt your new technologies, utilize e-commerce where it makes sense for you, and find new and interesting ways to engage with the Chinese public. Expand your ties as well with the brick and mortar stores, restaurants, and companies, because they're not going to go away. They're of lesser importance, but there will always be that as a market as well, as a channel. And if I could say one thing, it's China is not a place where you go and you sell one toothbrush to every Chinese person and you become a multi-billionaire. You have to have a long-term vision. You're going to take some pain. I certainly did when I was working there. But as long as you keep the goal in mind and you keep kind of adapting towards what you will find is a successful model, that to me, and from the experience I've had with companies, those are the companies that succeed, that really make a commitment, stick to it, but are flexible enough to adapt as things change. So first of all, check to see that you have market access, of course. And again, we've got people in Beijing who do nothing but market access. They're extreme experts in the area. I'd be happy to connect you if there's any questions, and to see if your company, if your product has market potential. So that's market studies. There's a number of professional service firms that do nothing but market studies and polling within China. We are happy as connectors to kind of bring you through to them. Understand that competition is heavy, particularly in the well-known markets like the Shanghai's. Shanghai is extremely competitive, but it's a very wealthy market. It's a very interested market in foreign goods. There are markets which are less competitive, but are more difficult to get at. That's the interior of China, the south of China, a little bit is ignored in some ways, and the north as well. But you have to take a product that's going to meet the wants, needs, and desires of Chinese consumers. So you're going to have to really think about localizing. That includes through your branding presence, includes through your marketing text. There is a price sensitivity in China, which isn't always the case. Chinese people are willing to spend on luxuries. If you could see, for example, a street in Beijing at late night in a nice district, you will see more Ferraris than you've ever seen in your life. And people are brand conscious. So people will buy into the brand. They will have a brand loyalty there. As I said before, you got to find your niche, and then you have to have a resilient supply chain. You want to make sure that if you're going to try to cover a big market in China, you're going to have product available, potentially in Canada, potentially in China, or do some processing in China in the long term. You have to monitor the market, changing conditions, and you have to adapt. This is Decree 248 and 249. Bill mentioned it, I think, a little bit in passing, which requires registration for exporters who are doing food products to China. It's a highly, it's not tremendously complex, but it does require registration. You have to understand it, understand when you are liable to that. If you don't have it, it will act as an absolute market barrier. These are the sorts of things I'm happy to expand upon. I won't do it here, but I'm happy to talk to you or to kind of patch you across to colleagues who work in this area every day. And then finally, look at different channels for entry. There are e-commerce channels where you will have a very, very light presence. There are others where you will have to have more in-market presence and in-market assets. And I should say as well, the TCS is here for you the entire way. In Toronto, in our office, we act as a bit of an intake valve. So we try to make sure you're prepared, give you some basic information, make sure that you've got your kind of head around your strategy, your intellectual property protection strategy. And then we make those connections to your markets of interest. So that could be anywhere within China, any one of our offices, depending on what you're trying to do. That office then does three key things, which is try to connect you to the people you need to know. So this could be tax advice, this could be HR advice, could be incorporation advice, could be marketing, and very importantly, distributors and customers. So if there's one thing in my experience, if you have a bad partner, you're going to have a lot of pain. So put your time and effort in making sure that your distributors, your partners, if you're hiring staff after incorporation, that they are good. Like put your due diligence effort up front rather than hoping and then finding out later that, oh my God, I've made a mistake, because nothing will sink an excellent business quicker than having partners that aren't excellent themselves. And we're happy to work with you to maintain and enhance your market access and your market profile. We'll provide you information, and you'll see it if you go to the CFEA website. There are notations there from our market access secretariat about the new decrees, about the registration of goods in China. We also have a great deal. If you look down at the bottom there, there's a link to something called the SME Gateway. These are short videos on a number of topics about doing business in China, right from Chinese cultural etiquette all the way through to handling sort of specific topics like intellectual property, taxes, HR, and all these sorts of things. As Bill's reappeared, I'm right at the end, I promise. So you'll see that we're one source and we're a free source, and where there's somebody who doesn't want your money in China but has value to add, you should give them the time and explore it. As well, you'll see that a lot of the industry associations are very, very active, whether it's Canada Wood, Canada Beef, you name it. Find mentors, find people who've been there before and learn from them. Work with your chambers of commerce. The CCBC has got chapters across Canada. They're very knowledgeable. They do excellent events. They try to connect you. As well, within China, there's the CCCT in Taiwan, the Canada-China, the Hong Kong Canada Business Association, CanCham Shanghai, CanCham Pro River Delta for the south, and CCBC in the north. Depending on where you're going, these are people that are banding together to help each other. And when I say co-opetition, unless somebody's a direct competitor with you, they're not your problem if they're coming in as a Canadian company. The market is plenty big and difficult. Find allies, find friends, share information, network as heavily as you can, because learning from other people's mistakes really in China means you don't have to suffer that mistake or as likely to. And people in China is a very complex and rapidly changing market. The more allies you have, the more people are feeding you information, the more people you can trust, the better off you will be. And that's it. On the right-hand side, there's all the ways you can find out more about the Trade Commissioner's service. But if you have any questions, please take down my email, send it to me. If I can't figure it out, I'll find somebody who can. Love to start talking to you. Love to see what we can do together. Thanks again, Bill, for inviting me out today. Thanks, Susan, as well, for hosting, and the Canadian Food Exporters Association. And I am going to pass the baton, the paddle, pardon me, back to Bill.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Tom. Very useful presentation. Lots of great information in there. At Canoe, we work very closely with the Trade Commissioner Service and with CFEA, obviously, and then also with CanExport to either apply for funding on behalf of our clients or apply directly for funding ourselves, and then we pass those savings along to our clients. So if you are looking for that good partner to help you navigate a lot of the pitfalls that exist in doing business with China, then we think that CACL and Canoe is a good partner for you. I will now pass it along to Susan. Pass the paddle along to Susan. Thank you, Tom. Hang on. There we go. Let me. Tom, I don't know if I regained control from you. Oh, here we go. Okay, now I have it. And I will then pass the authority along to Susan here as soon as I can. Sorry for this, Susan. The link that says, oh, here we go. I can reclaim host, and now I can give it to you again. All right, here we go. Allow me to make you the host, and it should be up to you now.
Great. Can everyone see my screen? Because that's all I see now.
We can see all of the slides.
Okay, just let me go into the slideshow. Okay.
Excellent.
Great. So hello, everyone. For those that don't know me, I am Susan Powell with the Canadian Food Exporters Association. The Canadian Food Exporters Association is a not-for-profit. We've been around since 1996, so we are 25 this year. Our goal is to work with small to mid-sized food, beverage, and ingredient companies to help them with their export initiatives. So we do a lot of trade shows, trade missions. We provide market intelligence, and we try to connect companies with international buyers. As a member, there's quite a number of benefits received, and here's a list. And Bill, I'll give you a copy of the presentation so you can share it with the group. I'm not going to go through this full list. My goal today is to talk about the trade events that we do. So for 2021 and up to 2022 December-ish, we have a number of events that we are organizing, virtual and in person. And we have, even through the pandemic, have done some virtual programs and some in-person. And in particular, the in-person, we've done some in China. So we are working with local representatives in China to be able to continue to maintain a presence for Canada. And so we are at the Cial show. We've done 2 Cials through the pandemic, and we will be back at the one in May 2022. And we will also be at China Food and Drink Fair, and we'll have 2 presents, one in wine and spirits and one in the food hall. Now, as I said, we can't go in person because of the pandemic. China hasn't reopened the doors yet for international travelers, but local representatives, if companies have them, they can sign up and participate that way. We also have a number of events around the world. So here on this page, it's the virtual in Asia, and then we have Europe and South America. And most of these shows are now back in person. So we will be traveling to these events as they come up. The first one we will actually be going to is in the United States in end of January. Companies that participate through us, if they're a member, receive funding directly through the CFEA instead of applying separately through CanExport. As we've applied for funding through the agri-marketing program of Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada. So companies will receive 50% of their airfare per diem for so many days, depending on the length of the event, 50% of the cost of booth and furniture, graphics, etc., and also 50% of shipping. that's about it. I mean, the biggest point we want to make is that it's important to get out there and to network. And in order to increase exports, we need to be in market. So we're happy that things are starting to go back to in person, and that we'll be able to go and meet face to face, and for companies to be able to sample the great Canadian products that we have to offer. And if anyone has any questions, I am available for any questions at the end of this presentation. Thank you. So Bill, I'm gonna try and figure out how to send this back to you. I've never done this.
Oh, I can just.
You already did.
Yes.
That's great. That's great. And I'll send you a copy of the presentation so that people can see the list of services that we offer, and the list of the events that are up and coming. And just for your information, Bill, we received the pricing last night for China Food and Drink Fair, so that's going out hopefully this afternoon or tomorrow.
Oh, fantastic. Well,
Yeah.
we are definitely interested in attending China Food and Drink Fair, even if it is just with some of our local agents. I've already talked to them and they're keen. If we can travel, then I would love to be able to fly back to Chengdu and participate.
Yeah, but unfortunately, because I should actually give a little plug here to the trade commissioners. We work very closely with the Trade Commissioner Service, and so we're always in contact with them. And according to Shanghai, it's unlikely the doors will reopen to China until fall of 2022. So it will be local representatives.
Yes. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you very much, Susan. As I mentioned, I'm going to go into my very hardball sales pitch now for 3 minutes, and then we'll launch into the Q&A session. And I've seen a few questions come through the chat. We'll start with those and then launch into anybody who has any live questions as well. So, Canoe Global Trading, our mission is to share naturally pure Canadian goodness with the world. We believe that Canada produces some of the world's best food and drinks, and we want to represent clients that have not only a passion for what they make, but a passion for sharing it across the globe. We believe people should become a member because we work very closely with the Trade Commissioner Service, with the CFEA. We leverage the resources that Canadian government provides to us and associations provide to us. But we also have 35 years of experience dealing with China. We know how business works there, and we can overcome a lot of the hurdles that you're going to encounter when you start to try to do business. We've had great success in a number of different categories, and we believe that not only by using the in-person knowledge and old school knowledge that we've got with China and other markets, we're also leveraging some new technologies to attend virtually and to put things online as well for B2B sites. We make it very easy for our members to join. We've got 3 different membership categories. We are able to bring the most value to our platinum members, where we not only provide exposure to up to 4 brands for each one of our clients. We list products on canoetrading.com. We list products on a number of B2B trading sites, that's Salad Plate, Lazada, a number of other trading sites as well. There are a couple that the Canadian government is promoting as well. One is called Shop at Canada. We're on those sites as well. We have a guarantee, a $50,000 annual sales guarantee for anybody who joins in as a platinum member. And then we basically act as an extension of your sales team. We'll provide dedicated sales concierge support, member support for any new inquiries that are coming in, monthly sales reporting, attending e-trade shows, participate in e-trade promotions, and even, once it's allowed again, attending in-person trade shows at cost. And that'll be subsidized cost, subsidized by Agri-Food, by CanExport, or by CFEA. And then we'll allow product sampling in market for any products you want to test. We have 4 trade programs that we run a year, and our 2022 winter tour actually starts in 2021. We're going to Taiwan in December for over just before Christmas for the Taipei Food Show with the CFEA. In January, there's a salad plate e-marketing campaign that we'll participate in. In February, we're going to Denmark and participating in a Taste of Canada promotion in Denmark. In March, we're going to FoodX in Japan. CFDF will have local representation represent us at the show with CFEA at the at the China Food and Drink Fair in Chengdu. And it looks like Food Hotel Asia has been postponed for now. But what we've seen with other shows that have been postponed is that Salad Plate Sourcing Festival replaces that show for the time being while it's being postponed. So we'll participate in that as well. Again, you can contact me directly for any more information at billjr@cacl.net. For any information from Tom and the Trade Commissioner Service, you've got his email address here as well, and Susan Powell's email address is there if you want to reach any of us. So with that, let me go back to our common spot here and stop sharing. Oh, there we go. Sorry, I flipped screens. And we can come back to the main room and we will start to address some of the questions that have come up in the chat. So let me start at the top with the first questions. Let's see here what we have. First question is, thank you for sharing your advice in doing business in China. You mentioned the new regulation to be effective on January 1st, 2022. I appreciate if you could provide some details on this regulation. Yeah, so as Tom mentioned as well, there's a new decree 248 or 249, I think, which will require all manufacturers who are exporting food or beverage into China to have a manufacturer's registration number applied as a label to their cases and to the minimally sales unit. So whatever your bottle or your packaging that's going to be sold at shelf, it needs to have a manufacturer's number identifier on it. You can register at through a single window system, which is finally in English. And I can share a little presentation with you on this as well, so you can register directly.
Bill, can I interrupt for 1 second on that?
Sure.
You can also go to the CFEA website and click on the news/blog area, and there's 2 different articles posted that goes into detail on how to register, so you can access the information there. It's open to the public. It's not closed to members.
That's great. Okay, thank you, Susan. Tom, do you have anything to add to that one?
I'll just post a link to the actual text of the decree. It's USDA did the translation. But if you're having any issue with it when you look at it, it is a little tricky. Kindly reach out. We'll make sure that you talk to our people in Beijing if you have added questions that you can't find through the link on CFEA.
Okay, all right.
The decree is also posted under those sections as well on the CFEA website.
Okay. Next question is there any update regarding required license, aka blue hat, for natural health products like vitamins and herbal supplements? I'm going to pass that over to Tom to answer. My brief answer is I'm not aware of any new regulations. It's still onerous, but Tom, do you have any comments on it?
Yeah, there was a couple of questions, and the other one was from Adolf Ing about quotas and imports. And basically, I wrote I'm sorry, I kind of jumped the gun. I wrote my answer in the chat. But basically, if you give me the specific details of what you're trying to find, that always helps. I really don't want to generalize about Chinese regulations because it is complex. Send me an email. In Adolf's case, I'll find that answer for you specifically once I know the specific question. And then Michelle wrote about licensing for natural health products, vitamins, supplements, so forth. It's called the Big Blue Hat. There's also the Big Orange Hat, which is a different level. I'll get you the latest, and I'll connect you to our consumer goods person who tracks this. So she'll have the most updated. Again, I don't want to speak too much in generalities because it is an area of complexity, but I'll make sure that you get that information.
Excellent. Thanks, Tom.
Yep.
I believe those were all of the questions we had in the chat. If anybody else has a question that they'd like to ask live, feel free to unmute yourself, and you can put yourself on video too if you'd like, and ask the questions now.
Shy crowd, Bill.
Oh, I guess not.
A question for Tom. Tom, we've been hearing a lot recently about tensions, political tensions between China and some of its trading partners. And we've seen some fairly clear evidence of ties in China between political considerations and economic ones, with the result that the Chinese government has imposed trade restrictions on some of its trading partners. We're also seeing some seemingly increased tensions in the Taiwan Strait. And my specific question is, are we looking at an increasingly politicized relationship with China? And specifically, are we looking at increased tension in the Taiwan Strait with Xi Jinping perhaps adopting a more aggressive attitude toward that relationship with Taiwan?
Okay, well, first, the sort of the disclaimer. One, I don't represent the government of Canada on the bilateral file, so this is not in my sandbox whatsoever. There are people who do nothing but monitor and report on the bilateral side. As a general comment, having been in Taiwan before, worked in Taipei and so forth, it certainly does seem like tension is ratcheting up. I have no inside or special knowledge of that. It also does seem in just kind of reviewing the moves of China over the last couple of years that trade and politics are very much intermeshed. I'm not competent. I don't think I don't have the inside knowledge, and I don't track it closely enough to kind of look at the inside trends in terms of what Xi Jinping is doing moment to moment. But in just a general scan, it certainly does seem that if a political issue arises, there doesn't seem to be any reticence to bring trade into that, as we've seen, particularly in the case of Australia. Does that kind of answer? I'm sorry I can't go too much into depth because, again, I'm not able to give that opinion as a Canadian government officer, right? Oops, did we
Thank you,
lose?
John.
We lost him? Oh, there you are. Okay.
No, still here. Thank you. I appreciate it. It's a sensitive issue.
Thank you.
All right, we're at the top of the hour, right on schedule. Are there any other questions? We're happy to take one or two more and extend the meeting by a couple of minutes.
Bill, will you be sharing the recording with people?
Yes. So let me close by doing that. Thank you very much, everybody, for attending. We have recorded this video, and I'll be posting it on our website, and we'll be sharing it with all the meeting attendees as well. Thank you so much for coming. On behalf of Tom and Susan and myself, we hope that all of you are avid exporters and are interested in participating in some of the CFEA trade programs, contacting the Trade Commissioner Service, and of course, working with Canoe Global Trading to try to diversify and deepen your relationships in the export world. Thank you so much and have a great day.
Thank you for organizing it, Bill.
My pleasure, Susan.
Thank you, everyone.
Have a great day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.